Okay, so we're light a couple of participants, but they'll show up. We got a lot of stuff to do today, so we're gonna get cracking right away with it, and we're gonna continue on with manipulating audio. We're gonna work on some mixing techniques, and then if we have time, I want to play you a bunch of different mixes. I have a session set up with a bunch of tracks in it. And we'll take a listen to hear from different eras, how things sounded, how things are panned. But I'm not sure if we're going to have time for that this week. So let's go here. And let me go here and here. Boom. All right. Great. So last week we talked about manipulating, or the last class, we talked about manipulating audio in certain ways. And we're going to move on with that a little bit more. So, I've got all of the audio files for the remix in here and in the clips area. So I'm just going to drag out Funky Drummer. We'll start off with that. And I'm going to bring that and I'm going to just drag that in here. Okay. And I'm going to put it at measure 3. I don't want to have it at the beginning of the session. So I've turned on loop playback, and it's right here, loop playback. It's Command Shift L, right? That turns it on and off. And if you have, which I haven't asked you to have this in, but if you've got this up here, the transport, you can see the playback head has that loop around it. But if I do this, the loop disappears, right? You can always right click on this and make it loop also. So there's always multiple ways to do things. And the reason why I want to do that is I want to double check and make sure that this is going to play back looping without there being a glitch, Right, so that's right in time. There's nothing weird at the end where there's a little space, and this is a really good example to play with. So we're going to find out the tempo of this, right? And we all know how to do that. This is one measure, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So Command I, and we're going to go from 3 to measure 4. And that's going to give us a tempo of 102. Now, if we look at here, it's this really weird number, right? But that's okay because this is recorded on tape, and who knows what speed the tape was going at. And you notice how this is gray, and there's these marker triangles here. It's a tempo only for this one measure. So to make this a real tempo, just click on the tempo tab here and just hit enter, right? And then that becomes the regular color, the dark highlighted color. And that's the tempo of the entire piece from that point on. So I'm going to make this bigger. Now, we've gone over how to separate each one of these individual elements out into a piece of a kit. And you've reordered those. Everybody did a good job with that to create your own drum loops. But what we're going to do is we're going to work a little bit more with elastic audio, and we're going to work on changing the feel of this. All right. So what I want to do is I'm going to go over to this area here, and this little knob here is our time base selector, and right now it's set for samples. So if I click on this, right, you'll see there's samples and ticks. We're going to make it ticks so that it's more in line with MIDI. And then we're going to click on this, and this is going to be our what's called elastic audio, and we're going to click on this, and we're going to select rhythmic. These are the different algorithms. We are only going to use polyphonic and rhythmic for our class. So what you select rhythmic. All right. So this is now elastic audio. So what does that do? Well, that allows me to do a bunch of things. So let's say I wanted to change the tempo. And let's say I wanted to make this slower, like at 96. If I just type in 96... So the audio now follows the conductor track. Now, this is within limits. It sounds good, right? So the further away you get from the original, the worse it's going to sound. Let's change that again and make it 80 beats a minute. Whoop, sorry. You have to make sure that you've got everything selected. So that still sounds good. I hear on my headphones some artifacts from the room sound. The drums all sound good, but there's some artifacts with the reverb from the room that this was recorded in being stretched. You know, that sounds a little weird to me, but in a mix, this will still work. But let's go back. Let's undo that and go back to a more moderate tempo. Let's keep it at 96. That's fine. Now, because this is tick-based and not sample-based, we can do all of the functionality that we can do to a MIDI track. So, for example, if I wanted to change key on this, if I called up transpose and I wanted to transpose this down a fifth, so minus, I guess that's 6 semitones. Hit apply. Right? I can undo that. We can also quantize it and change the feel, and we're going to work on that. So before you go doing that, you have to realize that what Pro Tools is doing is that it is putting a marker on every transient, and that marker is defining what tick that transient starts on. So these are all 16th notes. So, you know, wherever the 16th notes lie, whatever that tick is, no matter what tempo you're at, that transient is going to start on that tick. And then it time stretches the rest of that hit to fit, or time contracts. So what it does is, if you go here and click on the track view selector, you'll see something that says analysis. And that's not sitting on a couch with a shrink. That is adding these little markers on every transient, right? So what you want to do is you want to go through and you want to make sure that they're hitting exactly where the transient is. And on a drum track, it's not a problem because they're all fairly well defined. This one here, that might not be a transient. We may have to play around with that. We'll see. We're just taking a note of that. So these all look like they're right on the transient. Right? This one here is right on this transient here. They're a little tiny bit off, but that's okay. Now, what you can do is, if you use the grabber tool, you can hover at the top and you see that the cursor changes to a cross with 2 arrows. If you click, you can drag and move that around. Right? And if you double click, you can get rid of it. So you can drag it. So let's say the transient was here, you could reposition that. And if you thought that there were too many, you could double click and get rid of it. But I want to keep them. They all look good. All right, so that's looking good. Go back to waveform. Okay, great. All right, so I am going to play this. So I'm going to call up my quantizing. So that's option 0. Quantizing is also up here. But I'm going to show you from here, from the event operations window. Now, you can make this, these are, so listen to this and tell me what the lowest, the smallest note value is that's being played. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So between each beat, how many sub beats are there? Is he hitting? Tick,
4?
tick, yes, it's 16th notes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's say that let's play around with this. So we've got my quantize. We're going to make sure that we're elastic audio events. The quantized grid is 16th note and a tuplet. So we're going to make 3 in the time of 2, and we're going to maybe make the strength 90%. We don't want it to be too perfect. And let's hear what that sounds like when I apply that. So you see how that's changed the swing feel a little bit more, right? Okay, let me undo that. Now, if you look in here further, right, there are all these groove clipboards. Well, the groove templates. So I'm going to go to the MPC style grooves, and these have all these different 16th note swings, right? I'm going to start off with 57, right? 50 is perfectly even. And when you go higher, it gets more swinging. So what it does is it takes the second 16th note and it moves it closer to the next 16th note. And apply. Right, so that's a little bit of a swing. Let's undo that. And let's make that more dramatic and see what that sounds like. So let's make that 63%. So that's pretty cool. I've completely changed the feel of that groove. Now let me undo that and let me try a Logic style groove. So let's try Logic Swing 16E. So that's even more dramatic of a swing. I like the MPC style groove. So let me go back to that 61% or so. Okay, so that's pretty cool. I like this sound. It's good. What if I wanted to beef up the kick drum? Well, we did a little bit of that where you could place the kick drum wherever you find the kick drum here, but there's another technique I want to teach you. So first thing I'm going to do is Command-Shift-N, and I'm going to add a stereo instance of boom. There's two ways. What you can do in Pro Tools and in every other DAW is you can convert audio into MIDI. So what the software does is it analyzes the audio track and it detects the pitch, the frequency, right? And it also detects the amplitude, the volume. So it translates the pitch into a MIDI note. So if something is middle C, it'll be C3. If it is loud, it'll have a higher velocity. If it's soft, it'll have a lower velocity, right? It assigns these things. So this works well, but you always have to tweak it afterwards, okay? So I'll show you that because we're going to do a couple of examples of this. So there's two ways of doing it. The first way of doing it is to right-click on the audio file, and you'll go down and you'll see copy audio as MIDI. Copy. And then you get these algorithms that you can use. Click on this and you pick the one that is the most apropos. I'm going to pick percussive. Now what's going to happen is that these are all going to be the same pitch. So I'm going to hit OK and nothing happened, right? Well, what you need to do is merge, paste that, or paste that right there. So now this is where all of, if I make these notes, you could see that this note starts here, this note starts, or if we go like to here, right? You remember we had that analysis? You see that these notes are really close to where the analysis is. In some cases, it's a little bit before, but it's pretty close. And in this case, this is so soft that it doesn't detect it as a separate note. Right? So that's basically what it's doing. It's putting the notes right there. So what we have to do then is we have to, this is going to be a kick drum. So our kick drum is usually on C1. So this is boom. I don't think we've gone over this, but this is like a beatbox, right? And you'll notice here, this should be very familiar to you because we did our drum grid editing like this, right? But this is set up so that if you you can play notes starting on middle C, and it'll play a pattern. And then if you go up to C sharp, it'll play a variation. If I go to D sharp, E, so it'll go up 16 pitches, right? And it'll play all these different patterns. But if you play the lower pitches, it just plays the individual sounds. We're not going to worry about any of these other bits for now. I will go over boom next week, a little bit more detail, but I'm just picking that now. So I've got this kick drum, and that's C1. So I need to transpose all of these notes down to C1 and just pick the ones that are the kick drum and get rid of the rest of the others. So if I go Option T, I can transpose all notes to, I already have it set here, but you can just type in C and the number 1 and then apply. And then if I solo this, you're just going to hear kick drums. And you hear different velocities because, different volumes, because it's basically the different amplitudes. So now, again, this is another thing that I can edit in the edit window, which I don't like doing. But for this particular thing, what's really great is that I'm going to mute boom, and I'm going to play back funky drummer, and I'm going to just see where the kick drums are. Hold on. Here we go. So bomp, bomp, right? This is not a kick drum here. So I can get rid of that. Oops, excuse me. This is not a kick drum. This is not a kick drum. This is a kick drum here. So these are not kick drums. And these are not kick drums, right? So these are the kick drums that I heard in there. So I'll go back to my clips view, and I'll play this. And see how I've beefed up the kick drum? Right? So that's pretty cool. I think. And there's other things you can do. If you want to completely get, like if you want to make the boom kick drum be a little bit more prominent, there's another technique I'm going to show you. This is the first time I'm going to go over this with you guys. So this is our insert, and notice that we've got our instrument inserted in the instrument track, but I'm going to go right here and I'm going to insert, and it's in the Avid folder, something called EQ3 1. And this is a simple filter, right? So the two filters that we're going to concern ourselves with are low pass and high pass. So with high pass, the filter does exactly what it says it's going to do. It's going to allow the high frequencies to pass, and the low filter is going to allow the low frequencies to pass, and it's going to attenuate the opposite. So the low pass filter attenuates the high-pitched notes that are the high-pitched sounds, and the high-pass filter brings down the volume or attenuates the low pitches on your sound. So we've got the kick drum here. So if we want to make the kick drum softer, would we select a high-pass or a low-pass filter? Okay, so is the kick drum a high pitch or a low pitch?
Low pitch?
Correct. So if we want to bring down the volume on a low pitch, what kinds of pitches do we want to allow to pass through? Higher pitches.
Higher pitches.
So we'd want a high pass filter. Oh, thank you, Daniel. You're cheating though, because you had this in the other class. So the high pass filter is this one here. And notice, see that this is volume, and this is, so from bottom to top is volume, and from left to right is low pitch to high pitch. So let's bring it all the way here so there's very little attenuation. So I've gotten rid of quite a bit of the kick drum, right? So now if I bring the other one, So I've added that kick drum to this groove, which I think is pretty cool. Okay, that's kind of fun. So I like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select both of these and I'm going to duplicate these. I'm going to make a 4-bar phrase so that you can do that one of two ways. You can do Command D. Oops, I'm sorry. And then see how it just doubled that? Command D and then Command D. So now I've got 4 bars. Or you could do Option and the letter R like Robert. And that brings up repeat. So I can repeat that 3 times and that gives me 4 bars. So there's those, like I said, there's multiple ways of doing the same thing. So now I've got a 4-bar groove. Okay, that's kind of fun. Now, we're already starting to remix, right? We've taken this bass, this drum loop. We've changed the feel, right? It's now swinging more, 16ths. And we've attenuated the bass drum on that track. And we've replaced it with boom, kick drum from boom. So now we've got something with a little bit more of a contemporary sound in the low frequencies, but still having the human feel, right, of James Brown's drummer. Okay, so what if I want to add a bass track to this? So let's take our Ain't No Mountain High Enough bass, right, which is Ain't No Bass, and I'm going to drag it here. And I'm going to work on this, right? So the first thing I need to do is this starts, I'm going to solo this, so I'm going to find out where it starts. Okay, so it starts on 1, beat 1, right? So what I've done is I've put my playback head here. I hit the tab key on the computer, T-A-B. And it goes to the beginning of the transient here. I'm going to do Command E, separate that out, right? Let me zoom back out. Double click and delete. And then I'm going to go back to grid here, which is F4. And I'm going to get this to start right here. So now it starts at the same place, but it's the different tempo, so it's not going to work. Right? So we need to make it the same tempo, and then we need to adjust the feel, right? Remember we made the other one swing a little bit? So we're going to have to do that to this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to count measures. 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's 4 bars, right? So I want to get rid of that last note. I'm going to hit tab. I'm going to hit E, and I'm going to delete that. Okay, so this is not quite 4 bars, right? That's just serendipity that this happens to be 4 bars and this happens to be 4 bars. I actually knew that because I practiced this before class. So anyway, I'm not that smart. Okay. So we need to make this 4 bars long. So what we're going to do is we're going to go here and we're going to change it to ticks and we're going to change our algorithm. We could try monophonic. Let's see if monophonic works. Sometimes it doesn't work so great, in which case you'll have to undo and try polyphonic again. All right. So now the next thing I want to show you, and this is really, you have to be very careful with this because you could ruin your music if you aren't aware that you've got this set. So if I go up to the trim tool and I click on it, right click, you've got all these different options. I'm going to click TCE. That's time compression and expansion. So now I go to grid. I'm going to click and just move that out. So now this is 4 bars long. So let's take a listen to our track. Okay, so now it's the same length, but it doesn't feel right because he's playing a straight eighth and this is swinging a little bit. So now we need to play around with our quantizing, but before we do that, we need to double check. So we go to analysis and you see here all the problems, right? Let's go, let me get my grabber tool. Or I can actually use the selector tool. But you see all of these extraneous markers here, right? So we don't want those. That'll mess us up. So, okay, let's go back to slip mode. And then I can just highlight and delete those. Here's two more right here we don't need. All right, so did you see what I did there, right? You understand that? There were extra markers there that I'll undo that, right? Remember, I said this is putting markers on each transient. But there's no transients really here. But this is every software does this. This is why you need to. It's great, but you need to massage it a little bit in order to make it work really well. So I'm going to delete this. There seems to be another one here, and there seems to be two here. So now, and there seems to be one here. So now I only have transients on the note starts. So those are the only ones that are going to be quantized, not those other ones that really had nothing to do with the bass line. So I've highlighted this, option 0. And let's try the same swing. I'm not sure that's going to work, but let's try it. Okay, that's good. But I want this to hit with this kick drum here. So this kick drum's on the first 16th note. I might want that on the second 16th note so that it hits with this, right? So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put my playback head here, hit E. I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to slide this over so that it hits with this, and then I'm going to quantize that, right? And because I had the high-pass filter, I'm not going to really hear much of the other kick drum, especially with the bass playing. So that's better. What happens if I added another kick drum? Right, so here I have to do the same thing here. So I separate that out, I move that over a little bit, and then quantize that. What happens if I added one more kick drum? So if I copied this and put it here and quantize that. So let's see. That's pretty cool, I think. Right? So see how like in half an hour I'm getting somewhere. You know? So I'm going to duplicate that. So I've got an 8-bar phrase now. So I want to see what pitches he's playing. I could figure that out, right? But let's pop it into a MIDI track so that we can find out what key it's in, what he's playing in, because I want to add a melody to this now. Now, there is some, those of you that are going to be taking Audio MIDI 2 next semester, we'll have the summer to get something called Melodyne installed into the computers that are in the library and also into your laptops. Because if you've got an updated version of Pro Tools, you have a basic version of this software called Melodyne, and I'm going to show you why Melodyne is so great. We're not going to use it because I asked a few people and you don't have it in your computers. we can do plenty of work with this method, although Melodyne is a much superior product because that's all it's focused with is manipulating audio, pitches, and timing and stuff. So let's right-click on this, and we're going to copy our audio as MIDI. And this is melodic, right? It's a single note. We're going to copy that. Command-Shift-N and Command-Shift-N. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. Hold on. Let me do that one more time. I'm only going to do Ain't No Hot Bass. I had all these other ones selected. So let me copy audio as MIDI. Great. And now Command-Shift-N and one stereo instrument track. And let's pop expand in there. And let's just pop in a quick bass. Let's do full finger bass because Jameson played with his finger. And then let's paste that in there. Okay, so it's an octave too low, right? So we can fix that right here. So I just brought that up here. Let me just hear something. Yeah, it's playing that low octave. And it's playing that low octave because if you listen really carefully, I'm going to go over this shortly in another instance. If you listen to the bass, you can hear dig-a-dig-a-dit from the cross sticks of the drums hitting on the drums. The microphone is picking that up because they were all playing in a room together and the bass was being mic'd. It wasn't a DI box. I don't know if you can hear that over the internet. Boom, dig-a-dig-a-dit, right? So it's picking that up. So that's an extraneous note that we don't need. So let's go to our MIDI editor and we're going to select this and okay, so we're going to consolidate all those. And we're going to just listen back. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's not quite right. You know what I mean? It's not really feeling it right, but the pitches are there. So that's very helpful. So we can open this up again and we can look at notation really quickly and we could see that we're in the key of A, right? So it's giving us an A to G sharp. Okay, that's fine. That's all I need that for. Let me mute that. I don't really need to see that anymore. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I'm going to take George Harrison and pull him into here. Okay? So I'm going to listen to Here Comes the Sun.
Here comes the sun, do-do-do.
One,
Here
two.
comes the sun, I say it's all right.
Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to find out what beat that melody starts on. It's Here Comes the Sun, right? So it's beat 2. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on this measure by measure or phrase by phrase. So
Here comes the sun.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So 1 is about here. Okay, and I'm going to move this back out of the way. And then, because I'm going to work on that later. So Tab, E, delete. Go to grid, change my grid to quarter notes. And I'm going to drag this so that it starts on beat 2.
Here comes the sun. Do, do, do.
Okay, so that's one measure.
Here comes the sun. Do, do, do. Here comes the sun.
It's a little bit short. Whoops, let me drag this out a little bit.
Here comes the sun.
2, 3, 4, 1.
Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. Do, do, do. Here comes the sun.
That's better.
Do, do, do.
Okay, so let's make this ticks, and this is polyphonic. We're going to make it polyphonic because there's chords later. And this should start on beat 3, bar 3, beat 2. 1,
Here comes
2,
the
3,
sun. Do, do, do.
1,
Here comes the
2,
sun.
1,
Here comes
2,
the
3,
sun.
4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So this should actually go, whoops, sorry, let me undo that. I have to go back here and select my TCE and drag this out like that. And now this should be in time.
Here comes the sun.
Nope, not quite right. Let me see if I got that the right number of measures.
Here comes the sun. Here comes.
Okay, so now.
Here comes the sun.
So that's good up until the doot and doo-doos, right? That doesn't sound good. So I'm gonna for right now, I'm gonna lose that. So I've separated that out. Now let me double check my analysis.
Here comes the sun. Here comes.
Right, so we don't need this. Right, I'm just getting rid of these markers I don't need.
Here comes the sun.
Let me try quantizing this. Just the first half. And we're going to, this is not 16th notes, but we're going to try it and see what happens.
Here comes the sun.
So that actually feels better already.
Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun.
Right? So you see, I've got that now blending in, and it just happened coincidentally to be in the same key as Ain't No Mountain High Enough, I think.
Here comes the sun.
Right? Okay. Now,
here comes the sun. I say it's here comes. Here comes the sun. I say it.
all right, so I'm going to select that much, right? And I'm going to do a similar thing with that. I'm going to pop that right onto beat 2. And I'm going to use this to let's see if that fits.
Here comes the sun.
No. Let's try this.
Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. I say.
Okay, so
Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun.
I'm going to quantize this, and then I'm going to listen to the bass. I might have to reconstruct the bass a little bit.
Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. I say.
I'm going to get rid of that. Okay, so that's, and also I'm going to just, this is getting chopped a little bit, so I'm just going to bring that up, and I'm going to fade this out a little bit so it doesn't cut off. So this is what I've got so far.
Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun.
Yeah, so that's not working correctly. So let's bring this, try to...
Here comes the sun.
That's better. Okay.
Here comes the sun.
So what happened was that this has a transient here that sort of fades in a little bit, but the note actually starts right here. So I could have, and then drag. So that's now it's starting right on the grid there.
Here comes the sun.
Now,
Listen.
okay, so we could do a mashup, right?
Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. Listen, baby.
I'm not sure I like this, so I'm going to mute that, which is highlight and then Command M like Mary.
Here comes the sun. Listen, baby. Here comes.
Okay, let's get this edited. Right? And I think let's try starting that right on beat on the downbeat here. I don't know. Let's see. You just have to, you know, I'm playing around with this to see how it works, right?
Here comes the sun. Listen, babe.
2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. Listen. 1, 2, 3, 4. Listen, baby. Right. So it comes in over here.
Listen, babe. Listen, baby.
Right. So this is actually not at the same tempo as the original. That's why I'm having problems here. Okay. So we need to play around with this. Polyphonic.
Listen, baby. Listen, baby.
All right. So I've just got that little opening phrase, right?
Listen, baby. Listen. Listen, baby. Listen, baby. Listen, baby.
That's better. It's not right
Here
completely.
comes the sun. Listen, baby.
2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Listen, baby.
Listen,
I can't get that exactly right. It's bumming me out.
listen, baby.
Oh, because I'm on quarter notes here, and I should really be on 16th notes. I see.
Listen, baby. Listen, baby. Listen,
Ah, that's better.
listen, baby. Here comes the sun.
So maybe the first time I don't have a doot and doo-doo, and the second time I do. And then what I could do with Marvin is I can make him lo-fi sounding by putting two of these EQ 3-1 bands. So I've got one in here, and then I'm going to option click and drag it down. And the top one's going to have a low pass filter, and the bottom one's going to have a high pass filter, so that you're only going to be hearing the mid frequencies. This is a cool effect.
Listen, baby. Listen, baby. Listen, baby. Listen, baby. Listen, baby. Here comes the sun.
Okay, and now doo-doo. So I need an instrument. I'm going to just put mini grand in here so I can get my pitches, right? Now, the other way to change this into MIDI is to simply drag the clip in here. See that? It didn't work correct. So this is like a case where well, this is a case where Melodyne would be better.
Professor.
Yeah.
Is it maybe because of the stereo jack?
No, that's not too much of an issue here. What's an issue here is that he's singing in between pitches sometimes. You know what I mean? And this is one area where they need to upgrade the algorithm for this. Okay, so it's a B and a C sharp. It wasn't that hard to figure out. And he's doing that at the beginning. It almost sounds... All right, so that's fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this track twice. All right? And I'm going to delete these, and I'm going to delete these. Okay, so what we need to do now is separate this out into its individual components. And the same with this one. Right, so each one of these, just like it was an individual drum, each one of these is an individual pitch. Right? So this is an A. So I'm going to make that a C sharp. So option T. So a C sharp from A, 1, 2, 3, 4 semitones higher. Oh, transpose by 4 semitones. Make sure you've gone back here. Whoops, come on, 4, not 17. This is going to be a D. So that's 3 semitones. And it's going to be an E. That's 3 more semitones, right? All right, great. So that's the first harmony. So then if this is an A, the first one is going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 semitones, right? Minus 5. This one's also minus 5. And this last one is minus 4. All right, so now if we listen to this. Now, it sounds a little weird, so we'll have to do some tweakage. The first thing is that they're too loud, so we'll bring the volume on those down. We use clip gain. That's already sounding better. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, on this lower one, I'm going to get rid of some of those low frequencies by adding an EQ3 one band. What about this one? I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to get rid of some of the high frequencies on this because it sounds like a chipmunk. Yeah. Oh, whoops. I did the wrong thing. Hold on a second. Okay, great. So now what I can do is I'm going to pan one of these to the left. So I'll hold the Option key down and click here. And then I'll hold the Option key down and click here and pan that one over to the right a little bit. So let's take a listen to this Mishigas here. Everything.
Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun.
Okay, so these are still too loud, right? And these can also be helped by drenching them in reverb. Oh, Daniel, that was Option Shift 3, I believe. So those of you that have taken digital recording and comp this semester, you know this next technique, but the rest of you, I'm going to teach you something new. Let me have a little hot beverage. All right. So at the bottom of your session is where you're going to put all of your what are called time-based effects. These are things like echo and delay. And I'm going to give you a little introduction today to how to add a reverb track that you can send a copy of the audio from another track to be affected by the reverb. Now, it's true that you can stick a reverb as an insert into a track. I don't go for that because what you're trying to do is set up a sound stage so that you can have a consistent mix where everything feels like they're in the room together. Now, I do have in my mixes mostly several reverbs, right? But they all serve a function of the big whole. If you've got 20 tracks with 20 different reverbs on it, good luck trying to make that sound like a mix. Yeah, don't worry, Georgie. I'm making a review video that you can capture what you missed. So don't worry about it. Not a problem. Okay, so let's do this. So we're going to highlight the very last bit, and we're going to do Command-Shift-N, and we're going to add 2 stereo, what are called aux inputs. And I'm going to create these. So, I only created one. Well, let's duplicate that. And then I'm going to color code these right away. And I typically, I make all my time-based effects the same color. So what is an aux track? An aux track is a track that plays back audio that's sent to it. So in other words, you can't put an audio file in that track. You can't put an instrument file in that track. But what you can do is you can send a copy of audio from one of these tracks here to go through this track. And as part of the signal chain from this track, you're going to insert a reverb. So what we're going to use is we're going to go to Avid and we're going to use something called D-Verb, right? Which needs to be upgraded. So I'll be going over this more in the future, but we're going to just use a little plate here. So I'm going to go a vocal plate. And then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to turn the gain completely up. And I'm going to name this reverb. And then the next thing I need to do is I need to set my input. So here is my input. So if you have not been having this I/O column, you need to click here and make sure that I/O is visible. So I'm going to take my input and give me 1 second to make sure that I've got everything back at 0. Yes. Okay, great. So I'm going to go to the input right here and I'm going to click and I'm going to go to bus 1 and 2. So what is a bus? A bus is, you know, as you would probably think of it, is that a bus is something that takes you from one place to another, right? But in the audio world, the bus is short for something called a bus bar. And let's do a definition on that really quick. In electric power distribution, a bus bar, also a bus bar, 2 words, is a metallic strip or bar typically housed inside a switchgear, panel boards, and busway enclosures for local high current power distribution. They are also used to connect high voltage equipment at electrical switchyards and low voltage equipment in battery banks. They are generally uninsulated and, all right, so this is a bus bar here. And what bus bars do is they enable connections to be made. So if you've got electricity going through here, it's going to be going through this bar as well. And if we look at an old switchboard operator, right? You see that this is like in my parents' time. Hi, Mercy. No problem. Don't worry about it. You're here now, and you can always watch the first hour of the video. We've gone over some really good stuff today, I think. Okay, so what happens is that in the old days, before you guys had your cell phones, before there were anything like cell phones, and even before there were just regular like telephones, like from this might have still been in existence when I was a child in rural areas, but typically what would happen, let's say in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, is that you would call somebody on the phone and an operator would be listening to see the number that you called, and they would take a jack, right, from your phone that's attached to a cable that comes from your phone line and plug it into the person that you're trying to reach, their phone line, right? So this is called a patch bay, and we use these in the music industry all the time. I've got a bunch of patch bays in my studio. I've got 4 patch bays in my studio that I use, right? And that's something for next semester, but basically what you're doing is these all have bus bars in the back of them, and you're busing the audio from here using this cable to here, right? So this is John, and he's calling Marcia, and Marcia's here, or maybe this is Jane calling Jack over here, right? And these are direct lines to their hardwire analog telephones. So this all got transported into the recording studio with these patch bays. It's a great way to route audio all over the place. And virtually inside of Pro Tools, you have these buses, and buses are used to distribute audio from one source to another. So how do I get sound to go from, let's say, this, in here comes the sun, here, into this? Well, what you need to do is go here, and there's a column called Sends. Now you need to have that activated going forward. And this is the Sends column, and Sends are used to send a copy of the audio that's on that track via a bus to another destination. In this case, it's the aux input. So if I click here and go to bus 1 and 2, a little mixer shows up. So I'm going to solo this, and I'm going to turn up the volume here. And as this is playing, you're going to hear reverb, and you're going to see level in this track here.
Here comes the sun.
Oh, let's just loop that.
Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun.
You hear that now? There's that reverb on that.
Sun. Here comes the sun.
I'm going to insert this right here. That whatever you do going forward, whether this is the only class you take and you're doing it because it's an interesting subject and you're using it for your jazz degree, or whether you're getting your MAP and you're going to use this as a part of your being a public school teacher, or you're going to be an artist creating your own music. No matter what level you do this at, if you're going to continue on after these classes are over, learning and understanding signal flow is one of the most important things that you can do. Signal flow affects all sorts of stuff. I believe I showed, we did a demonstration on basic signal flow, but as I teach you these topics and get deeper into this stuff, just learning how to route audio and understanding that can create solutions to issues that pop up in so many ways. And as these DAWs get more and more sophisticated, Pro Tools now has a way to get audio from Logic Pro into Pro Tools directly, right? It's got these augs, I forget what they're called. It's new within the last iteration or two, but you could be playing something on, I don't know, on iTunes or some other software, and then route that audio through this new function that Pro Tools has and have it come up in an aux track. So learning all this stuff, you'll be able to make it easier for you to figure out some of these things. So signal flow is incredibly important. Okay. So I've added some reverb to this track. The other thing I want you to do, and I haven't gone over this too much in digital recording and comp, I'm going over it now. And you should be thinking about doing this going forward. So if you right click here, you're going to get a new menu, right? And it's going to go rename. And I'm going to call this plate reverb. So that this way, when I go to my bus, it's right there. So I'm going to add some reverb to these other two tracks here. What I can do very quickly, since I like the level that this is at, I'm going to hold the Option key down, click and drag. Highlight that, hold the Option key down, click and drag, and now I've got some nice reverb on all three of these tracks here. And it makes it sound a little bit more smooth.
Here comes the sun.
Right? Okay. So we're going to move on to the next topic now. We've been at this for an hour. All right. So just a couple things that are really important here. Always remember that which position your trim tool is at, whether it's at T, C, E, or the normal position, right? That's something to pay attention to. Before you start quantizing audio, go to analysis and make sure that you do not have extraneous markers. Get rid of them. And also make sure your markers are right on the transient. Use the grabber tool and move it left and right so that it lines up correctly. So you have to do a little bit of manual adjustment, and it will make a big difference in quantizing. We worked on audio to MIDI, and we saw that some things worked well and some things didn't work well. We quantized audio, we transposed audio, and then we went over how to make the feel of different tracks from different songs fit together, right? We took the bass line from Ain't No Mountain High and fit it in with the funky drummer. We enhanced the kick drum of the funky drummer. We used the high pass filter to get rid of some of the kick drum. You won't get rid of all of it, but you can get rid of some of it, enough of it so that when it's playing back in the track, what's still there, it won't bother you. And then we enhanced that by adding a more modern kick drum sound. And then to help the bass line fit in, even after I quantized the bass line and stretched it out so that it fit in the same time and had the similar feel, I added a couple of extra kick drum hits to accent some of the bass notes. Then we did the same thing with we took the vocal, right? And we figured out what beat the vocal started on, we did it in sections. I figured out a measure of the vocal. I got that lined up. I played around with the timing. Maybe I have to separate out a couple of the notes that don't really work and maybe not even use them, or maybe use them a little bit later, right? And then you'd have to, you might not use all the lyrics. You don't have to use all the lyrics. You can use this much and maybe another line from here and a couple of the Marvin Gaye things, or maybe there's a Stevie Wonder line you want to see if you can fit in here. And, you don't have to have the entire lyrics through the whole song. You're doing a remix, and then you'll be adding your own MIDI instruments into here and doing an orchestration and an arrangement. So, and then for the stuff for the undergraduate students, you can do similar things with those audio loops that are in that folder. And if you want to try this, be my guest. Get something in for me to look at. Have you guys handed in anything today? Yay, nay? No? Get something in for me.
Should we hand it in by the end?
Yeah, if you hand in something, I'll get up tomorrow and I will take a look at whatever's in the folder and I'll give you feedback. I'll put another folder up for next week. Get going. Hand me in something. Time is tight, right? Hand in something. I can give you feedback. I can walk you through this and make your project better. That's how all those other things that sounded really good, that's how they worked on it. Right? They handed me in something every week. I gave feedback. They fixed. I made suggestions. They did the suggestions. And I walked them through and just basically, I want to give everybody a good grade. I want you to do well. And the last thing is AUX inputs, right? AUX inputs with reverb, and then using Ascend, setting up the input. So I'm going to go over that again next week. Many people in this class are taking digital audio, digital recording and Comp 2. We've gone over this extensively in that class. We've spent half the semester working on reverb and delay, which I think I've never been able to do before, which I'm really happy about because it's such an important part of mixing. Okay, so let's put this aside for a minute. Excuse me. I'll save that. All right. So this is the Bartok, one of the Bartok pieces that some of you did. Right? Okay. It's very simple. It's silly. It's the whole thing. Let's talk about a few things. So virtually all of you are working in some sort of laptop. Maybe a couple of you have an iMac, but probably you don't have the latest and greatest and most powerful computer known. I mean, I have a 2019 Mac Pro with like a really powerful processor and 256 gigs of RAM. And sometimes I run into issues with that. You know, I think I've got 24 cores or something like that. So I want to show you a couple things here with this little bit. I want to show you how to extend the capability of your laptop. I showed a few things in the DRAC class on Tuesday night, but I want to expand upon a couple of things for you guys here. So playing back sampled instruments, the samples are loaded into the RAM of your computer, right? So if you've only got 8 gigabytes of RAM, you got to realize that the computer has to run the Pro Tools software. Some of that goes into the RAM. It has to run the graphics. Some of that goes into RAM, even though most of it's in the GPU. And any other things you have open in the background, your browser, your email client, maybe you've got something else going on in the background. All that stuff takes up space on your RAM, which is why when you're on your computers, if you're working in Pro Tools, every other application should be shut on your computer, except for Pro Tools. So right here, I've only got 8 or 9 tracks, so it's not a problem. But let's say I wanted to do 100 tracks, right? It'd be kind of difficult for you guys to do that on your laptops probably, but I've done film scores where I've had 100 tracks on a cue, right? They're not all playing all at the same time, but different articulations, you know, different sounds, different colors. It can add up. So there are 2 tricks that you can do with Pro Tools to help mitigate this. One is called freeze and one is called commit. And what both of these do is they take your MIDI tracks and they create an audio file. And it's much less processing power to play back an audio file because that streams from your hard drive than it does to play back samples that are in a software instrument. The difference between freeze and commit is that freeze creates a temporary audio file and commit creates a real audio, like a permanent audio file. So let me show you how this works. So let's take a look at this right here, square wave. So if I wanted to freeze that, if I right click here on the name, freeze. Let me zoom in on that. Freeze. Oops. And if we look at this here, you see this stuff is grayed out and there's a little snowflake right here and right here. That lets you know that the track is frozen. You can still see in the background the MIDI notes, but these are audio waveforms. Right? So that's frozen. So let's say you want to go back and tweak something with MIDI. Just click on the snowflake and then it goes back. And then if you click on the snowflake again, boom. Okay? Very easy. Committing something is a little different. We'll get to that in a second. Now, what I want you to do is to, at the bottom of your session, so let's say I was going to mix this, and we're not going to be talking about adding reverb and adding delay to this right here. I just want to show you another concept. So I'm going to add an stereo audio track, Command-Shift-N. And I'm going to add a stereo audio track, and I'm going to call this music. Okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the output from all of these tracks and route it through this music track. So I'm going to hold Shift and then click on the top. So all these are now selected. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Option and Shift. And I'm going to go to the output of these tracks, not to the click track, but all the other tracks. And I'm going to click, and that they're all going to go to bus 1 and 2. Whatever the first bus that's open is. It could be 3 or 4, whatever. Just bus 1 and 2. And you'll now see, if I make these tracks bigger, that all of the output is bus 1 and 2. So that's Option and Shift. Make sure that they're all selected. And then to unselect them all, hold the Option key down and click on any name. Then we'll go here and we'll set the input to be bus 1 and 2. And I'm going to rename this, and I'm going to call this music. And then when I play this back, you're not going to hear anything. Whoops. Right? There's audio happening here, but there's no audio coming out. That's because you have to do something called input enable. Notice here there's a little I. Click on that, make sure it's green, and now we'll hear. Right? Now, what I want you to do when you're working is in the inserts, you're going to go to the bottom of your insert here, and the bottom slot, you're going to put something called EQ7. So that's in Avid. EQ3 7 band. Right? And we're not using this for an EQ. As a matter of fact, you could turn all of these off. I'll go over this at some point before the end of the semester. So none of these are working now, but what we're going to do is we're going to be able to see our level here. It's got a meter on it. Okay, so when that kick bass drum came in, you see that we're in the red. No good, right? We have to fix that. What you should do is, until that kick, the taiko drum came in, the loudest sound was just a little bit above -6, which is good. So here, we're going to bring the MIDI volume down on that. Good. That's better. Okay. So that's the first thing. You've got everything coming through here. Why is that important? Because when you're finished mixing, you're going to hit record here, and then you're just going to go back to the beginning. Oh, hold on a second. I'm going to turn the click track off. I don't need to hear it while it's playing back. And this is your mix right here. Okay, I'm going to go over that entire process again, all right? So let's do this and have everything coming out the main outputs. Let me delete this. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to have one main output where everything is routed to. And there's several reasons why I'm going to do that. But the first one is that you're going to print your mix onto this track. And then you'll be able to do some additional processes on that particular audio file. And it's just another way to save processing power, because you can make all the other tracks inactive if you're running out of processing power, and then you've got your mix done. You can add your mastering EQ and compression and whatever else you want on that track and still have processing power left over. So I'll explain that more in a minute. But first thing we want to do is we want to add a stereo, and make sure this is stereo audio track at the bottom of your session. Stereo audio track, and we're going to call it music. Okay? We're going to select the input to be bus 1 and 2. We've already named that music, but you just right click and rename it. And then you input enable. Then the next thing you need to do is select all of the instrument tracks. So you click on the bottom one, hold the shift key down, and click on the top one. So now you see just the instrument tracks, including the piano tracks, are all selected. And then I'm going to hold down the option key and the shift key. And then I'm going to go to any of the outputs here, not the click track, but any of these outputs of these selected tracks. I'm going to click on that and go to bus 1 and 2. And they will all be magically delicious, routed to bus 1 and 2. See that? Music, music, music. So that's option and shift. Routes all of the selected tracks to the same output. And now everything's coming through the music track. So if I mute that, you hear nothing. Now, the next thing we went over is we want to make sure that our gain structure is good, that we're not printing too hot. We want to leave a little bit of room to post-process our audio, or to have somebody else post-process it or master it, right? That's a good question, Daniel. So Daniel's asking, is there a way to see processing power being used by Pro Tools? So you go to Window, and you go to System Usage at the bottom. This is using like 3% of my computer power. So this is easy for my computer to see. So that's the system usage under Window, the bottom one. And then you have disk usage, right? This shows you all your hard drives, the available amount of space. But system usage, all right, Daniel? Okay, so very important, in the bottom slot of the music track, we're going to insert in Avid, or you guys can just go to EQ, EQ3 7-band. This is a very nice, very clean EQ. It's very useful. It works fine. It doesn't have a lot of character to it, and you have to exaggerate some of the frequency bands in order to hear the effect, but it's very useful, and it's great for teaching. But what we're going to use it for here is the metering. And just to ensure that we don't screw anything up by changing the EQ curve, we're going to deactivate by clicking on the in button all of these different bands. And as you see, I do that, the little bubbles, the little balloons that are on those lines disappear, right? So you see up here, the red one, if I click this here, it's gone. The orange one is gone. The yellow one is gone. The green one is gone. And the blue one is gone. So what this is good for is our input and output. Now with digital recording and comp 2, we've gone over this already, but everybody else, this is new for you. So when I play, I want to make sure that my loudest peaks are just at around -6. If it's a little bit over, if it's between -6 and -3, that's okay. You know, don't be too crazy trying to get it perfect, just as long as it's around -6 and you don't have anything going into the red. So I can watch this track and so that's the loudest, a little bit above that. So I'm up here with just a couple of hits at the end. That's okay. I'm going to live with that. But most of it was living around the -6 area, the loudest peaks. Okay, so what you're going to do is once you got that together is you're going to hit the return key. You're going to go back to the beginning of the session. And you're going to record this and you're going to print your mix. So I'm just going to... Why is that so soft? Oh, I messed up the output. 1 second. Let me redo that. There we go. Okay, so now the last step in this, and there's actually going to be another additional step, is we need to make sure that our end fades out nicely. So I'm listening to where the tail ends, right? You can see there's information that goes up all the way over to here. So what I'm going to do is maybe delete some of this and then select and hit the F key so we get a nice little fade out. And if I double click this, right? If I want to make an audio file, there's two ways of making an audio file for somebody else to hear, for you to share, for you to put on your SoundCloud accounts and publicize to all your friends and fans worldwide that you guys should be cultivating. The millions of people that listen to our esoteric music. Anyway, seriously, there's two methods. The first one is to bounce it to disk. So that's Option, Command, and the letter B like boy. Or you can go right here and bounce mix. So that's under the File menu. And the wave is the full fidelity file. You make sure that your file is interleaved, 24-bit, 44.1. That's perfect. You do not want to import after bounce, right? So I'm going to bounce this now and make sure it's offline. Boom. Okay, that's done. So where is that file? Well, if you go to your session file, there's now a folder called Bounced Files, and here's your Bartok. Hey, Mom, look what I did. Okay, now let's bounce it again and let's export it as an MP3. So Option, Command, letter B like boy. And what we can do is we can go here and we can select MP3. And then we're going to get another window, which we're going to make sure everything is tagged correctly. Okay, so I'm going to hit bounce, and here's a new window. So you want your encoding speed to be the slowest, highest quality. you want your CBR, your constant bit rate, to be 320 kilobits per second. That's the best sounding CD. What you get from iTunes, I think, is either 160 or 128, but they use a different compression method. We just have MP3 here. So you want 320 kilobits. So you've got the title here. The artist would be me or you. The album would be whatever you title it, AM. Genre. Okay, hold on a sec. I'll call it electronic. Now, this sucks here. This should just put 0 and also 0 here. You don't want to have any information like that. So what I've done is I've added these tags, and I'll show you why that'll work nicely for you. So I'll hit OK. Oh, okay. So this needs to be blank. All right. Sorry. I always get that confused. Okay. So let's go to our bounced files. And let's drag this into iTunes. And let's go to recently added, and we've got AM1 projects. Right? So if I do Command I, notice that the tags are all good. Now you can add the composer here. You can do further tagging. You can get rid of the 1. Right? Now, artwork, right? What if you want to add artwork? So I'm just going to go find a picture on my computer. Here, I'll use this thumbnail. Just drag it on here. This is for another song of mine. And then you notice that it comes up that, and then if you drag this onto your desktop, you'll see that it has the album artwork. I'm going to go over that in more detail, but just getting the tags together is the most really important. All right. Let me get rid of that artwork. Okay. Now, one last thing about doing these mixes. What you need to do at the end of the day is to take all of your MIDI tracks and render them as audio. Why is this important? This is important because you can, if you want to work on this in another DAW, or let's say it's 5 years from now and Pro Tools is belly up, you want to learn how to properly archive your work. So the way you do that is like this. You select all of these tracks, okay? And then you right click and you're going to go to commit. And then what you're going to do is you're going to consolidate trips, you're going to render automation, consolidate clips, render automation and mute and pan, volume and mute. Copy the sends, the group assignments, insert after the last selected track. And on the source tracks, you're going to click this and you're going to go hide and make inactive. And you'll do OK. And now all of these are audio. The only other thing you need to do is, for archiving purposes, all of these should be the same length and they should start at, I didn't do the piano track, but they should start at the same spot and end at the same spot and have no breaks in the middle. So I'm going to delete that and that and that, right? And I'm just going to click and select all of these, right? And then consolidate that. So Option Shift 3, delete. And now make my mix. Okay, why is that good? Let me close this. Let me save, close. New, Bartok, import. And then I'm going to import audio. No, I'm actually going to do this a different way. I'm going to import session data. And I'm going to go to Bartok Brawl, open. And we're going to go to stereo audio. And we're just going to select all of these. Tempo, meter map. Okay. And there we go. Right? You could do, so that's one way that you can archive this and be able to import it into a new session. Let me show you one other way. Let's say I take all of these files, select them all, right? And I do Option and the letter Option Shift K, or I'm sorry, Command Shift K. This is going to export these selected files as WAV files. So we need to find a destination directory. I'm going to go over this again, but I'm going to create on my desktop a new folder, audio, and I'm going to put 134 BPM because that's how fast, that's the tempo. And I'm going to export. I'm going to close this. And here I've got Brawl audio 134 beats per minute, right? And notice that these are all the same size. Okay, so let me do a new session. Brawl 2, just naming it for now. And then I'm going to make my tempo 134. Import audio. Navigate to my desktop. Oh, sorry. Here we go. Copy, 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 open. New track. And here's our mix. Right, so we would mute that. And here's all the other tracks. You could do the same thing in Logic, in Reaper, in GarageBand, in any other band, so in any other thing. So if you're working with somebody and you want to send them some audio to play to, right, you can make stems and send them stems and they can play along and they could do the same thing and send you the audio back. They could work in any software they want and you can just import it into whatever DAW you're working with. So this is where understanding and being able to sort of MacGyver or figure out solutions to problems can be incredibly helpful. Okay, so we're going to go back over this stuff again, right? I'm going to hammer this home, but it's an introduction to this.